Good morning. Welcome to Ezekiel class. I'm talking to you today from Durham, United Kingdom. I'm here for the Society of Old Testament Study conference for a few days, and so we're working a bit remotely. I wanted to have a small talk today. This is my version of a lecture, and this one is quite a small talk, but let's talk about a few things regarding our class first, and then a few details on content secondly. So the first item is our sort of technique of doing class. When I began to do online classes for Fuller, we had a saying, you're not the sage on the stage, you're the guide on the side. And as time has gone on, we've made a few adjustments to that, and here's the reason why. When a professor is the guide on the side, the professor provides material and direction, but the students are the prime movers and create synthesis of the material through reading, writing, form interaction, and so forth. The sage on the stage is a more typical model for classrooms where we have a lecture set up. The professor is the prime mover and provides a more detailed analysis and synthesis through a lecture, while the students maybe take notes and read and write as a secondary appearing occupation. For this class, I consider myself a hybrid. We are all prime movers, and the course is a dance between yours truly as a guide and yourselves as readers, writers, and forum producers. So I'm expecting you to create synthesis through your hard work in the process of reading and listening to short talks, writing and form interaction, and I will try to provide extra analysis through these short talks, which are not technically lectures in the sense of long lectures like we would have in class. Okay, so there's a few items of housekeeping that we can talk about, and in this short talk I wanted to talk about the paper project. This is our one long-term project that we do for class, and there's a book at the top of your the course page called Paper Projects, Assignments, and Helps, and each assignment that we will be doing is in this book. And each time there's an assignment, it refers you back into that book. So that's where you want to go for the information. I'm aware that there are a few students in the class this time who've also done this project, a similar project in OT 500. So please feel free, any of you, to ask around for one of those students to give you a hand if you are wanting some more bits of information about that particular project, or alternatively, please do email to me and I will get back with you answers and that kind of thing. But primarily use the question form because that gives us all a chance to see the answers, whereas individual emails tend to get a little bit lost. I'm going to post the notes I'm reading from right now. One of the things we talked about previously, I talked to you about, was the fact that we need some suggested passages for these papers. And I'm going to include things like Ezekiel 1-3, which contains Ezekiel's vision, 4-7, Ezekiel 38-39, 40-42, 38, 1-18. And you're also welcome to propose your own choice. So this is one of the reasons why we want to sort of read through the book fairly quickly now, so you can look through there and find out what really is of interest to you, what passage creates interest for you to work on. Normally, in a paper like this, we focus on a section of about 15 verses. So if you choose 1-3, for example, that's far more verses than that. So you would pick one part to sort of focus on and talk about how it fits in that larger section. So again, standard kind of exegetical practice of looking deeply at one part and then looking at how it fits with its context as the secondary part. So the actual short talk for content today is quite short. I wanted to have you think about a few things that will go into that forum prompt that I placed in the class about hunting down actual commentary and reading the introductory material there. And there's a few topics that I would encourage you to look at as you're preparing for that forum prompt. And they come under the idea of the structure of the book, the authorship and the unity of the book, the dating of the book itself, and then the dating of the incidents within the book, and then main themes and messages. So let's look at each one of those in a sort of short way here, just to get the ball rolling today. Okay, so as far as structure of the book of Ezekiel goes, often you'll find it divided up into a twofold structure, a bipartite structure. Chapters 1 to 24 then talk about Judah and Jerusalem, and chapters 25 to 28 talk about the nations and restoration. Okay, that's a fairly common way to divide. You'll see it reflected in the second sort of format of a tripartite discussion, where we have chapters 1 to 24 again, and those divided up into chapters 1 to 3 as the call of Ezekiel, and then chapters 4 to 24 as the visionary transportation of Ezekiel to Jerusalem. Then the second big chunk in the tripartite division is chapters 25 to 32, where we find judgment of the nations. And the interesting thing is that this whole idea of judging the nations is mentioned in Jeremiah 46 to 51. It's mentioned in Isaiah 13 to 20. It's mentioned in the book of Zechariah, and it's mentioned in the book of Amos. And coincidentally, the nations all are similar lists of nations. And so this is important for setting the book of Ezekiel into its bigger context within the prophetic literature of the Bible. Okay. Then the third section, chapters 33 to 48, has prophecies and restoration. Prophecies in the first section, 33 to 37, mainly are the idea of judgment. And this is an interesting topic in and of itself that we'll return to as we go along. The second section, chapters 38 to okay, I've typed that up in a kind of crazy way. 38 to 39 are against Gog and Magog. Okay, so judgment against not Jerusalem, but against other nations. And finally, at chapters 40 to 48, the third part, is a vision of a restored temple. And that is a very fascinating section because we're seeing there how the book itself moves from judgment to restoration. It moves in a direction of hopefulness. Okay, the second aspect here is the idea of authorship and unity of the book. The fact that Ezekiel is the author is well supported by the information that you'll find within the first part of the book, chapters 1 to 3, talking about the family name of Buzi, mentioning the family, mentioning the priestly office. So we have here a prophet who is also a priest, which is different than what we find with other prophets such as Isaiah, Jeremiah. Okay, so that's an interesting factoid at this point in time that will be developed as we go through the class and talk some more about the content of the book, because we do have a lot of connections here with the whole priestly movement that's in the Old Testament. The unity of the book is an interesting sort of situation because through the history of interpretation, there's been a cycle. In the 16th century, critical scholars saw the book as a unity. And more modern critical scholars of a generation or so ago also would see the book as a unity. However, at a certain point in time, a fellow named Holscher analyzed it on the basis of poetry versus prophecy and decided that the voice of Ezekiel was only visible in about 170 of the poetic verses as far as being an authentic voice. And this was very different. That was kind of an extreme view. Presently, we have scholars now returning to the idea of a more unified view. Okay, the issue of dating the book of Ezekiel is complex. The interesting thing is that it does hold to certain sequences of events that happened and are historically accurate. But we'll talk a little bit about dating those things after you've had a chance to do your reading for this week. So we want to go back on that after you've had a chance to actually absorb some of the details that you're reading about. The main point of the dating, however, is that Ezekiel was exiled to Babylon in 597, along with King Jehoiachin. Okay, that gives us a kind of a point in time to hook the rest of our thinking to. So for those of you who are aware of when Jerusalem was taken into exile, you now have a little bit to hang your hat on as far as when all of this was occurring. Okay, Finally, the last bit I wanted to talk to you about today is some main themes and messages. Not all the main themes nor all the messages, but a few of the biggest ones that are kind of sketched in with the broadest brush that you'll want to be aware of as you're reading, because they do move forward in a sort of a sequence, okay? The one idea is a view of God as transcendent or as other, and we see that when God appears in a whirlwind and in a storm. We have here a very powerful and strong presentation of who God is, okay? And layered upon that is the idea that Judah is looked at as being sinful. Why were we taken into captivity? Well, the problem is that you're a sinful nation and you've now been taken into captivity. And this goes on with the idea of a God who is whirlwind and storm and wanting to take them in hand. Okay, so the third point here, and I think this is really an interesting one, is that Ezekiel looks into the idea of who is morally responsible. Is it the nation, or is it the individual, or both? If you recall, the Mosaic covenant was made with the people as a whole. Okay, his discussion of the people as an entire group. This renewed covenant idea brings up the idea of people as individuals, and we'll see this in chapter 18. Who's responsible? Is it the forefathers? Is it the Father? Is it the Son? And this whole entire discussion goes on in there, and it comes out at the end that individuals do have moral responsibility. Okay, so the idea that you can just say, well, it's the whole people, now has been challenged, and that's a really interesting thing that comes up in this book, and is, again, quite different from other prophetic literature. Finally, two more points. The idea of judgment. We want to look at the idea of judgment within this book because it is a fact. Judah has been judged. On what basis does God judge Judah? Is it based upon the idea of the Deuteronomistic idea, the good get good, the bad get bad? What is the basis of the judgment? So that's another big question we want to open up right now today to be thinking about as you're reading. And finally, and happily, is the idea of restoration, because with the judgment then comes restoration with the people, with God, with the renewal of the temple, with Ezekiel's vision of what will happen post-judgment is that the people will come back together with God. So these are all some of the main points, main messages of the book of Ezekiel that we do want to be thinking about as you're reading. I would encourage you, if you have questions, to go ahead and use the course question forum. I will be in Durham through Wednesday, traveling on Thursday. So if you want to hear from me, you can use the question forum, and I'll try to hit the question forum up at least once a day. Thursday may be a little bit of a blackout. I'll let you know if I have some internet on the train going down to Oxford. I will be there with you. Otherwise, I'll be there at the end of my day, which is basically the beginning of the day for you in the United States, if you're in the United States. Now, the nice thing about the asynchronous class is that you can check in anytime, and we do tend to have students who are on different time zones. So currently I'm on UK time. I'll be back with you in the United States time on the 22nd of January. But until then, we're tucked away nicely in academe and have a chance to really dig into some of these things. So again, welcome to class, and let me know if there's anything I can do to help you through the first week. Do participate in the forums and be aware that each of the assignments in this week are the ones that you need to fill out during this week. And I'll be back with you again with another short video probably in about 2 days. But for now, we'll sign off and talk to you soon. Bye now.